From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Support comes from Vision Zero. On foot or behind the wheel, safety is a shared responsibility. And Vision Zero Louisville believes 0 roadway fatalities is the only acceptable amount. Their mission is to create safe roads by design, engineering solutions, and education. More information at visionzerolouisville.org.
Sitting through a lecture won't sharpen the people skills required to lead a company. That's why at UVA Darden, the moment you set foot on grounds, you're immersed in a dialogue-driven environment that simulates real-world business scenarios and calls for real leadership action. Our top-ranked faculty design a curriculum that empowers you to lead your peers, manage teams, and drive measurable results. Ranked the #1 public business school in the country, Darden stands apart not just for what we teach, but how. UVA Darden, not business school as usual.
Welcome to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer. We talk a lot about the weather in Kentucky, but what about the air we breathe every day? Louisville has a long history of air pollution concerns, and according to this spring's State of the Air report from the American Lung Association, those concerns haven't gone away. The city received an F for ozone pollution, with more days of unhealthy air than in recent years. We also earned a D for short-term particle pollution, and our year-round particle levels remain above federal health standards. So what is in our air? How does it impact our health? And what's being done to clean it up? To help us break this down, we're joined by Rachael Hamilton, director of Louisville Metro's Air Pollution Control District. Rachael has over 30 years in health and environmental regulation and holds a biology degree from Salem College and a law degree from U of L's Brandeis School of Law. Rachael, welcome to On Track.
Thank you, Aisha. It's really great to be here.
So the American Lung Association gave Louisville an F for ozone pollution and poor marks for particle pollution. Can you walk us through what those grades actually mean, what ozone and particle pollution are, and really what's contributing to those levels here locally?
Absolutely. So particle pollution is probably the easiest. Most people would think of that as something they might think of as soot. So those are both coarse particles in the air as well as fine and superfine particles that you might be able to see on a day where we have, for example, wildfire smoke impacts. Most of the time you can't. Ozone is a little bit different. Soot comes from a lot of different sources. That's both combustion, like when you burn gasoline in your car, or when we make electricity at LG&E's facilities, or when you barbecue or even cook at home. Ozone is not directly emitted from a source. It's actually the combination of 2 different types of pollution in the air. Those are nitrogen oxides. Those are particles and processes of combustion and volatile organic compounds. And they mix in the presence of sunlight and form a new pollutant called ozone. We actually have an ozone season here in Louisville. That's that time of year where the formation of ozone is most likely. And we're in it now.
How long does that last? What is that time period?
Officially March 1st to October 30th.
Okay, a long range, really.
It is a long range.
So Louisville's struggles with air quality didn't really start recently. Can you give us a sense of how far back these issues go?
Well, the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District has been here in some form or fashion for almost 80 years. We started out initially as something called the Smoke Commission, and we were really focused on looking at pollution from coal combustion at power plants and people's homes. At that time, we actually measured pollution with buckets we hung on light poles, and we used a ruler. Today, we are a creature of statute. That started in 1952. The Federal Clean Air Act came into being in 1970, and we implement the Federal Clean Air Act here in Louisville. Over the last 20 years, we've had significant improvements in air quality. Now, there's still work to be done, and we are grateful for the American Lung Association's advocacy in their report. But over the last few decades, we've seen really significant reductions in local air pollution emissions and an improvement in air quality. For example, we've seen an over 85% reduction in emissions of toxic air pollution from industrial sources. We do that here locally through a program called our Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program. But we've also seen around an 80% reduction in poor air quality days since 2005. And just last year, We've had more good air quality days based on current standards than any time since we've measured current air pollutants.
That's great to hear. But it's kind of wild to hear how far back these issues have gone. And I'm kind of wondering, I know we've touched on some definitions of types of pollution, but what have been the main contributing factors to Louisville's issues with air quality?
So Clean Air Act really started out covering what they call 5 criteria pollutants: carbon monoxide, lead, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, ozone, and particulate matter. A lot of those pollutants come from combustion, transportation-related emissions, stationary sources. We have a lot of industry here in Louisville. And so, part of our success is that we have lots of manufacturing facilities and great jobs, but we also have to address the pollution that comes from those facilities as well.
So do you think like for Louisville specifically that like industry is the main like long-term factor for it being particularly a challenge here in the city, or are there some other contributing factors? Like I know of course being in the Ohio Valley, I imagine like stuff sits here as well.
So you identified some of the key components. It's meteorologically driven. It is geographically impacted. We do sit in the Ohio River Valley, and that can have, pollution kind of sit here over our area. But in terms of the sources of pollution, over the last 50 years of the Clean Air Act, we've seen the contribution in what we call our emissions inventory really kind of change dynamically from those stationary sources like manufacturing plants or industrial sources to being more transportation driven. Cars are really clean these days, but there are a lot more cars on the road, and vehicle miles traveled have continued to increase.
Yeah, and Louisville's definitely like a city that's heavy in transportation, cars per family households. I don't know the specific statistics, but over public transit, it seems like more people using cars than before. Do you think, or has it changed?
Just in my own experience, I'm fairly old, so a family used to have 1 or 2 cars, and now we have 2 or 3 or more as we move our families around. So that is possibly true that there are more vehicles, but I have to tell you, the vehicles themselves, they are just substantially cleaner, not only in how they burn fuel, but in how they hold fuel. But also the fuels that we use are now vastly cleaner than before.
Air quality, you talked about also weather. You sort of touched on that a little bit. Can we talk about more about how that plays a role in air pollution here in Louisville?
Sure. It's one of those critical elements for the formation of ozone. With respect to that season, it has to be hot. Dry air is really one of those things that actually helps ozone form. And, at this point, what we want folks to know about air quality is while it's improving, there are ways for them to stay up to date with what's happening through air quality alerts. That's one way that we share a forecast, just like a weather forecast. Particularly during ozone season, we meet regularly with our partners at the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. They're part of our metropolitan statistical area and the airshed that we help manage together. And we talk about what's the weather forecast going to be? How will that impact our air pollution forecast? And then, if appropriate, we'll issue an air quality alert to let folks know what to expect.
So are we seeing, I want to get to more about how it's improving, but are we seeing any new or emerging pollutants that are raising a concern right now?
So,
Or new obstacles that way, I guess?
there are always new obstacles and new challenges.
Oh, yeah.
With respect to, the core work that we do, looking at those primary pollutants, particulate matter and ozone, wildfires are driving a lot of pollution increases. In fact, when you look at our 2023 data, which is part of the American Lung Association report, what you'll see reflected in there is the impact of Canadian wildfires from summer of 2023, which had a significant impact along the Midwest and the Eastern Seaboard. We also see, of course, hot weather I'm a big fan of the humidity here. I know that's hard for people to fathom, but when it's hot and dry, those are really the prime conditions for the formation of ozone. We have low winds and that big kind of stagnant air mass just sits here in this bowl. Perfect conditions for making ozone, but humidity actually kind of scrubs ozone formation. So when it's hot and sticky outside, it actually has a kind of a weird air quality benefit.
Oh, wild. Wild to think about that, because that's something that everybody's warning me about is this humidity is coming. But it sounds like it's a good thing.
Are you not a native
Well,
Louisvillian?
no, I come from the Midwest. I saw those Canadian wildfires you talk of, and that truly was hard to see. Now, before we move on, I know you're talking about that there's been great waves of improvement in the air, but just it's hard to think about that if we've received this F for ozone pollution. So I'm kind of wondering about that disconnect a little bit.
With respect to the Clean Air Act, one thing you need to keep in mind is it's a continuous improvement plan in action. I am a huge fan of this piece of legislation. And the way that it works is it sets a standard. EPA sets that. Then it leaves to state and local programs like APCDs and our partners at the Kentucky Division for Air Quality and IDEM to develop the plans to meet that standard. Every 5 years or so, EPA is charged with going back and reviewing the most up-to-date public health-based information to determine whether that standard remains protective of public health and the environment. And so those standards are getting more, they're getting stronger. They go lower, but that means they get stronger. And we are at the just not quite there part of the ozone standard. And for the American Lung Association, this is their grading standard. And it is an excellent advocacy tool. For us, we're really measuring ourselves against that national ambient air quality standards and using the Clean Air Act to drive ourselves towards meeting that standard. There have been standard changes for ozone 1979, 2008, 2015. We've met those because it's a progressive process of getting to attainment. For the PM standard, the challenges that we saw with the wildfires for both ozone and PM particulate matter notwithstanding, our forecasting shows that we're going to meet that new standard that EPA set back in February of last year. That's the 9 microgram per cubic meter standard. So while the American Lung Association has their grading standard, that's a great tool. We're going to look to those national ambient air quality standards and use that path in the Clean Air Act to get us where we need to be or to keep us where we need to be, because that's work we have to do as well.
I guess just in simple terms for a 101er, what is the difference between those two measuring bodies, I guess?
So the National Ambient Air Quality Standard is the standard that US EPA sets based on health. The American Lung Association uses that standard to set their grading curve. If you compare areas, and I know the American Lung Association has a great tool that will let you look at different metropolitan statistical areas. And so you can see there's a lot of spread between F. Some areas have a lot of work to do. Areas like ours, we still have work to do, maybe not as much as some other areas. So again, the way that the Clean Air Act works, non-attainment isn't punishment, it's a process. And we're going to keep moving forward in our process.
And you mentioned health. Health is part of this. And I know poor air quality can have real health consequences. What kinds of health issues are most closely tied to this pollution? And have we seen any specific links, like through time, between Louisville's air and local health outcomes?
I guess the best way to describe the health impacts would be mostly respiratory type impacts. Particulate matter is your lungs are going to feel that particulate matter impact. There are long-term consequences that fine particles can cross your blood-brain barrier. Ozone, generally speaking, I've heard people describe the respiratory impact as like your lungs have sunburn. So there are real consequences to improving air quality and the impact that they have on public health. There have been some studies here locally. We recently, 2015, in order to meet the sulfur dioxide National Ambient Air Quality Standard, Louisville Gas and Electric converted Cane Run, which was one of their coal-fired stations, to natural gas. That reduced a whole lot of sulfur dioxide, which is a national ambient air quality pollutant itself, but it also has a secondary role in forming particulate matter. And at the same time that they completed the work at Cane Run, they added on additional scrubbers at Mill Creek, another coal-fired unit here in Jefferson County. And there has been research done that showed that after the completion of that work, there were measurable reductions through the Propeller Health Study in asthma and asthma incidents.
Are there some neighborhoods that are more impacted than others? And if so, like what makes them hotspots for Louisville?
So there are definitely differences in places where we have higher concentrations of industrial sources. And those areas may have slightly different air quality. It is, when we talk about air quality with respect to those national ambient air quality standards, generally speaking, we see consistency across our air monitoring network. I am really privileged to work with 50 environmental engineers, scientists, and other professionals here at APCD who do things like monitor the air, regulate the sources of pollution, regardless of where they may be located, inspect them, and part of that work that we do is implementing the Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program. As a local program, we're kind of unique. We're able to be more stringent than state or federal law. Air toxics, which is what the STAR program focuses on, are really uniquely local. And we've been able to have measurable reductions there, 85% reductions in air toxics countywide. But most importantly, 97% reduction in the chemicals of most concern from a study we did focusing in Rubbertown in the 2000s.
Well, thank you so much, Rachael. We'll be back with more in a moment. You're on track with Louisville Public Media. Hi, it's Aisha Jaffer, host of On Track. As a fan of the show, you may be wondering how you can help support this hyper-local podcast that focuses on topics and conversations that affect us and our community. One of the best ways is by donating at lpm.org or by becoming a sponsor of On Track. We work hard to create diverse and engaging conversations featuring guests from Louisville and Southern Indiana. To learn how your business can sponsor On Track, contact Tracy Karam at tkaram@lpm.org. It's a meaningful way to support both the show and the community while aligning your brand with important local conversations. Thank you. Welcome back to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and we are talking about the state of Louisville's air quality with Rachael Hamilton, the director of Louisville Metro's Air Pollution Control District. So what do you think are the biggest barriers to improving air quality, Rachael? And who do you think really has the most power to truly move the needle on this issue?
That is a really great question. Think on that for just a second.
Of course.
We've seen really great improvements and lots of innovation here in Louisville, largely because of our Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program. One of the things that we were able to do a couple of years ago was partner with US EPA's Office of Research and Development, looking at next generation emissions measuring equipment. We've seen a tremendous explosion of low-cost sensors. We use here at APCD regulatory equipment. It's expensive. It requires a lot of quality control and quality assurance, but helping people understand what their air quality is at their home or near where their kids go to school, that's been a really important way for us to talk about air quality, share information, and to develop political concern and political will to be engaged in the conversation around air quality. Our work as a regulatory body only gets done when there's public participation. This is a place where we invite people to come in and share their thoughts. When we do regulatory development, that is a great place to hear from people, because when we develop a permit, it uses those regulations, like a guidebook, to regulate a source that may be near their home. Some of the work that we did with US EPA on those next generation emissions measuring equipment pushed the envelope of national rulemaking and fence line monitoring. And it was great to partner with them and be able to demonstrate that those things were practical and appropriate to be used to better regulate sources and understand air pollution.
Are there any policies? I know we've talked about different things at the local, state, and federal level that are just currently in the works that you're excited about for air quality improvement, or some that you think still need to be implemented to really change or just continue to improve air quality on a vaster scale?
One of the things locally that I think folks will be interested in is that we have a lending library of sensors. We can set up sensor-based projects to help folks better understand the air pollution, within their area. With respect to, regulatory rulemaking, that's always interesting. We know there's going to be a lot of proposals from US EPA coming down the pike. We've seen some lists of programs that they're interested in reevaluating, and we expect those to be proposed sometime this summer. And we'll spend some time evaluating those and seeing what that means nationally and how that might impact our program here locally. I do want to say, while we concentrate, on this area, geographically a single county, air pollution doesn't really care. It doesn't abide by jurisdictional boundaries. And so how we all work together to meet those standards that protect our air as a local program and a state program and with our partners at EPA is really important.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking about how we were talking about industry can influence some of this air quality. I don't know if regulation or policy about that is something that would improve air quality, or things that are implemented like that could help the situation in our area.
Under the Clean Air Act. So, that's the really cool part. The Clean Air Act has a toolkit, and it allows us to use that toolkit to push our area towards attainment or to keep it into attainment. We use that toolkit to develop the state implementation plans. I've tried really hard not to use acronyms today. We are acronym heavy. What we develop is a thing called a SIP, a state implementation plan. And that is the planning that we use in order to maintain an area's attainment or to meet it. That work will always continue. We're in the process of that. There'll be some additional tools that may open up in that toolbox depending on where we are in meeting the standard. But there is a project that I hope that we'll have an opportunity to start again. We were awarded a $1 million grant from US EPA to do a Rubbertown air toxics health assessment study with our partners at West Jefferson County Community Task Force, U of L's Enviro Institute, Park Taball Community Health Centers, and of course our partners at Public Health and Wellness. That was to fund a 1-year air monitoring study, mostly to replicate the work that we had done back in that 2000 study looking at air toxics in Rubbertown. And our partners were going to use that in a variety of ways, looking towards the community to help the community understand where we are with air quality, particularly air toxics. Policy discussions would come out of that data and monitoring study. U of L was working to develop a health effects indicator tool as well as to complete a new health risk assessment now that we've been implementing the STAR program for 20 years. Right now that project has been put on hold. US EPA has terminated that funding, but we're disputing it, and our hope is that we'll hear from them soon and get back to work on that.
So, Rachel, what can people do on a personal level to reduce their exposure or help improve air quality? Is anything simple as like air purifiers, staying inside during certain moments, or even, coming to public symposiums and talking about the issues in their neighborhood? What would you suggest for those looking to protect themselves and their community?
First and foremost, to have them sign up to receive our air quality alerts. We push those out a variety of different ways, and they'll let people know when our air conditions might not be appropriate for someone say with asthma, or they may want to choose to do their exercising early in the morning as opposed to later in the afternoon. We do those through social media, but you can also just sign up at globalky.gov/air, and we will go ahead and start sending you that information. You get air quality alerts. Matt Mudd, our communications coordinator, does a air quality forecast every week, lets folks know just generally what's going to be happening in the air. But there are a lot of things that people can do. Our Kentuckiana Air Education Program, or CARE, which you may have heard of, will begin our summer campaign June 1st. How you drive your car is a great way to reduce pollution that forms ozone and adds particulate matter. Not idling. Simple steps. For businesses, we have an Air Quality Action Partner Program. The simplest way to get involved in that, and we'll give you a nice sticker to put on your door and we'll recognize you at a board meeting, is to just sign up. And when we send out an air quality alert, let your employees know. They may choose to fill up in the evening instead of in the morning, so that we're not adding as many volatile organic compounds from fueling. Simple things. The other is we do have a program that will help people transition from gas-powered lawn equipment to electric, because that really cleans the air right at the neighborhood level. So those are great ways that folks can help us clean the air. During the summer when it's hot and dry and we have these air quality alerts, we are the best excuse for not having to mow. You don't mow, we don't add that combustion-related pollution to the air. We love that. So if you need an excuse not to mow, we are it.
I'm sure a lot of people are happy to hear that.
Getting involved, it's great too.
Yeah.
And our board is our regulatory authority. They meet once a month on the third Wednesday of each month at 10 a.m. We do that in person here at our offices at the Edison Center, but we also offer a virtual option to participate in that meeting. The board offers a standing opportunity to hear air pollution concerns from the public. If you can't attend, we post a video of the meeting to our website. And if you have a comment you'd like to share to the board, of course, you can just send that on to us and we'll read it into the record for the board.
Rachael, thank you so much for all of that information, and thanks for letting us know the state of air pollution here on track. Rachael Hamilton is the director of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District. She's been working in environmental health and regulation for over 3 decades. On Track is a production of Louisville Public Media. The On Track production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Alex Biscardi, and Laura Ellis. Our music is by Kojin Toshiro. If you're just tuning in and you want to hear the full show, you can find it now at LouisvilleOnTrack.org or in your favorite podcast app. And let's continue the conversation. Is there something you want to hear about? Something that matters to your Kentuckiana experience? Let us know by sending us a text or giving us a call at 502-814-TALK or send an email to ontrack@lpm.org. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and remember, the air we share needs local care. Until next time, you're on track with Louisville Public Media.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
You've earned your place. Now let the perks prove it. At High Five Casino, the Prestige Loyalty Program delivers real rewards tailored to how you play. Reach icon status and unlock 2 extra sweeps coins and 180 more game coins every day just for logging in. And with every tier upgrade, you can score up to a 50 sweeps coin level up bonus, plus personalized daily harvests that grow as you climb. Log in now and check your Prestige tier. Your next High Five moment is waiting. HighFiveCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. Must be 21 years or older. Terms and conditions apply.